All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Health Department's weekly Thursday morning radio show. Today will be a pre recorded show, but we do appreciate all the listeners out there who listen to our radio show and who are, who are regulars to listening to our radio show. We love hearing good comments. And even if there is any other comments, negative or otherwise, that people have for us, we're grateful to hear that kind of thing.
And next week we'll be live, so we will be taking call-ins next week.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, today we'll be having a very special guest with us today. If many of you were at his presentation Monday, you would have been able to hear Dr. Omar
Manejwala, yeah.
And his talk about his book Craving and the kind of research that he has been doing for the past few years. I'll let him introduce himself here in a little bit, but like I said again, welcome everyone and good morning. So everybody want to do a little introduction?
Uvlalotak, this is Asisaun with Prevention.
Good morning. This is Mary Lewis with Health Department Administration.
And hello, everyone. I'm Omar Manejwala. I'm an addiction psychiatrist. I've spent my entire career helping people who are struggling with the disease of addiction, and it's my absolute privilege to be with you all here this morning.
Cool. And we're glad that you're here with us as well.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna read this little brief paragraph that I got from your website.
Oh no!
So Dr. Omar is passionate about bringing the science of addiction to light, better understanding of addiction and self-destructive behavior that can help everyone involved in this devastating disease, from addicts and family members to doctors and treatment centers. Whether he is involved in treating one addiction or speaking to millions via national media outlets, Dr. Omar is quick to connect the dots between brain science and behavior. He believes that by properly treating and even preventing addiction, we can save lives, not just lives of addicts, but in many ways also the lives of their families, friends, and loved ones.
Sounds like an amazing guy. I'd love to meet him sometime.
I know, it sounds like this is the kind of person we need on our coalition.
All right.
Who's your web designer?
Good.
But like I said, on Monday, Dr. Omar did a presentation for the community and gave out some of his books, Cravings, Why We Can't Seem to Get Enough. And if you were fortunate enough to come to the presentation, you might have been able to get a copy of the book and have it signed too by Dr. Omar as well. But like I said again, we're glad that he's here today to talk with us about prevention and treatment. That's basically what I went over last night. But you think you give us a little more of your background before we continue?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm a physician by training. So I was exposed to addiction often, but didn't know it. I saw people who were struggling with all kinds of issues, depression and anxiety, medical conditions. And I was wondering, why is some people not getting better? And what's really making this worse? And then I started to see people who had addiction in emergency rooms. And, I really got the impression that, well, no one with addiction gets better. It's just a hopeless condition. People are going to bounce in and out of the ER and die. And then around that time, my best friend died from an overdose of addiction. And other things happened, but ultimately I realized that it was just my calling to find out more. Is there a way to help? And boy, I realized how wrong I had been. I mean, I really discovered that by following people who were doing a great job treating my mentors, I discovered that addiction is a disease, not a moral failing. And I discovered that addiction is treatable. And so I learned how to do it. And I spent most of my career, running various rehabs. I was medical director of Hazelden, other places. And I think my background is characterized by, I think I became an expert in addiction the way many people become an expert in a lot of things, just by doing it. Just by, spending time with families that are suffering, that are devastated, people who can't stop, people who are desperate, people who really want to get help and can't get help. And so I guess I just cut my teeth in that, and I fell in love with the the possibility of recovery and hope and joy that can come when people really do recover from this illness. And so I guess the journey for me was discovering just how wrong I had been about this disease and how treatable it really is. And that's what launched my career. And so then it's just been, on from there.
Yeah. So right now you're the medical director at Hazelton?
No. Now I'm the chief medical officer of a company called Catasis.
Okay.
And this is a company that uses big data and analytics to find people who have these types of conditions and then uses some approaches to helping them get well. Yeah.
Cool.
And then I also do stuff like this, just, for fun, because I think it's helpful to spread the word.
Yeah, it's good to travel around and be able to spread the message, or being able to enlighten some people on the idea of, what is addiction and treatment, and trying to better the lives of, like you said, not just friends and family, but loved ones in general.
Yeah, just as you all have been doing for prevention.
Yeah. And like you had said too, it's sometimes it's hard to get past that moral and into realizing that it is a disease. Sure. And it's sometimes it's so hard to get past that.
Yeah.
Especially if you've seen a lot too, like you in the ER. Sometimes it's hard to. So I'm really glad you're here.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you came.
Yeah, it's really a privilege. And I fully agree with you, because people, when someone is active in addiction, they are often, they can run the gamut in terms of feelings, and they can often be like not a nice person. And you think to yourself, well, boy, this person's just a jerk. And when you realize what's going on underneath there, you realize, well, there's much more going on.
Definitely.
Here.
Definitely. And it can be so easy to judge.
Yeah.
Yeah. My parents are drug addicts and alcoholics.
Oh.
And my mother eventually died from...
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it led to her. And, growing up with that my entire life, I've always been able to see who my true parents were,
Right.
And nobody else has. So it's really hard. It could be really hard.
I'm sorry, and I'm sure that you also then became aware that it's a family disease. It's not a disease of a person. It's a disease of a family and also a community. Yeah.
I do. I know.
Yeah.
I have actually gone to treatment, coined out my dad a few times from 2 different facilities before, and that's where I had learned a lot about it being a family disease and it being treatable.
Yeah.
And it's partially why I love prevention,
Yeah.
which is why I really love prevention. And we should get a little bit more into that, swing into that too a little, because it can be cut too, knowing that it is a disease, it is a family disease, it could strike you, it really could. But prevention, you know a lot about prevention too.
Wait, but before we go into that, can you you had mentioned last night about the kind of what happens when people are addicts, or when people are addicted, like the idea of there not being enough of something. Can you kind of go over that a little bit?
Oh, yeah, sure. So the way I started the talk yesterday is I said that there's one thing that everybody who has alcoholism and addiction wants but can't get. Yeah. And that's enough. I mean, people can't get enough. That's the disease of addiction. And in a way, if you understand that people with alcoholism, they will never be satisfied no matter how much alcohol or drugs you give them, because ultimately that's a bottomless pit, if you will, in the brain, one that will never be satisfied. And so what we did in the talk was we looked at some pictures of the brain, and we looked and saw what exactly changes in the brain. And I think the biggest takeaway in many ways is that if you give anybody enough alcohol, they'll do things that, are damaging and destructive. But that's not addiction. Addiction is also what happens when you're not drinking. So addiction alters the brain. It changes you so that the decisions you make when you're not intoxicated, when you're not drinking, are also broken. And so it produces what we call chronic changes. And so one of the points in the talk was just that people can sometimes equate drinking a lot with addiction, but that's really not the case. Addiction is something that alters you, whether you're drinking or not, and you need help to be able to make healthier decisions, especially early on. You need help and support to be able to get your life back on track. It's not simply just not drinking or not using drugs as well. So that's some of what we talked about, yeah.
And kind of basically going over some of the things you're talking about last night.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there was some statistics. I can never say the word right there. Statistics that you had in your slideshow. You know, like 1 in 12 of people who suffer from alcoholism or something like that need substance abuse treatment, and only 1 out of 10 actually receive that.
Yeah, 1 out of 10 of the 1 out of 12. So right, it's a small number of people. Vast majority of people who need treatment don't get it. I mean, there's no other chronic condition, period, that says undertreated. Not congestive heart failure, not COPD, not heart disease, not diabetes, and not even depression or anxiety. Addiction is the most undertreated disease in the world. And I'll tell you, there's so many things that are sad about that. But the biggest one is that treatment works. So you have an effective treatment that's actually not that expensive or difficult to deliver, and nobody's getting it. And you have people dying. And that's devastating.
Yeah.
I mean, that's devastating.
It's also covered by insurance too,
Yeah.
and the North Slope Borough offers a scholarship, a one-time scholarship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we actually do for people who don't have insurance or can't afford to go to treatment. If you have been living in Barrow for 30 days, there is a one-time scholarship that the health department offers.
Wow.
That was funds from the mayor's office, though.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's
Okay,
a
that's
one-time
amazing.
scholarship. Sometimes there's special cases where you can get a second scholarship, but it's
So-
actually...
Yeah, that's amazing. So you want to make sure that you're using those dollars wisely
Yes.
and spending on treatment efficiently.
Yes.
But yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and like us, you're saying, there's opportunities for people to receive that help, but at the same time, there's also going back to last night, there's the stigma and the idea of shame when it comes to wanting or getting that kind of treatment. Can you kind of go over that a little bit?
Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm impressed you paid attention and you remember all this stuff from the talk. It's like, wow, I should have had you give the talk. So yeah, you know, these are conditions of isolation. These are conditions, I mean, the amount of stigma, first of all, the World Health Organization has determined, and I agree, and it's very clear, that addiction is the most stigmatized condition in the world, period, end of story. There is no condition, whether it's HIV or anything else, that's more stigmatized than addiction. And why does that matter? Is it just because, that makes people feel bad? No. But some of the research I showed yesterday is that the stigma actually impacts whether people get help. It actually it makes a difference in who gets help and whether it's effective. So we have to destroy that. And language matters. And our language is broken. We call people abusers. We label them. We relegate them to lower class citizen status. We don't do that for diabetes. I was on the plane on the way into Barrow next to someone who was getting a medical visit for a chronic condition. And was sharing with me about that. And what I realized was it's perfectly okay to get help for those conditions. And everybody understands and people pitch in together, and was explaining you guys even do fundraisers and help each other out, make food. And I mean, there's a real community effort behind getting people medical care. And this has to be the same thing. It has to be, because the shame and the stigma are incredibly toxic. And it's not just the stigma of addiction, but there is a second severe stigma that's been imposed on Native Alaskans with addiction, and also here in Barrow. This notion that came from that, flawed study that suggested that somehow Barrow was nothing but drunks was really the message that was portrayed. I mean, it's a deeply offensive and inaccurate portrayal that has stuck.
It is
and
very inaccurate.
Well, of course. I mean, it's entirely inaccurate.
But that stigma,
it has stuck, and that's been toxic. That's been toxic in my view, and it's just a barrier. It's just another barrier. I mean, there are enough barriers as it stands.
Yes.
And then you add this.
Yes.
So.
Yes, and it's actually, there is this study, I call it the bandwagon effect, is that the Ketchikan or the Alaska Wellness Coalition had created this. Well, we're always focused on this. 22% of Alaskan teens drink alcohol. So we're like, gosh, what are we going to do about that 22%? We're working really hard for it, and then the Alaska Wellness Coalition created this. Well, if you think about it, 78% of Alaskan teens don't use alcohol. So it's like, that looks a little bit better. And it also reflects, too, is 70% of Alaska Natives don't use alcohol. So it's like, that is a very inaccurate stigma and very inaccurate portrayal of Alaska Natives.
And yes, that stigma is, so in the lower 48 where I live, we talk about the percentage that don't use, and we brush the problem under the rug actually down there. And so you have 88,000 Americans who die every year from alcohol, and you've got about 30,000 who die from opiate overdoses. That's growing, but it's nowhere near the alcohol level. And so we brush that whole problem under the rug down there, but we have no problem pointing a finger and talking about how much you all drink in terms of the stigma and shame. And that's a double standard.
Yeah.
And that double standard has not been fair in any stretch of the imagination. It just gets in the way. So yeah, I think I made that point, and I think it's a great point. So
for bringing that up, it is. Yeah.
That's like I recently had one of those aha moments because when I was working here in public health and working with others on fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, I worked a lot with high-risk moms before and after the pregnancy, and there was a lot of sort of backlash because we also have, like in our community, basically, because we're a small community and people stay here a lot, they're much less migratory. You have cradle to grave, like IHS used to have cradle to grave medical records. So it's an ideal place, for instance, for a researcher, to come.
Sure.
What I'm trying to get to is that there were lots of quotes, and indeed, fetal alcohol spectrum disorders were and are a problem. But this population was presented as the population that was like, they've got all the fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. Well, because they're easy to research. We've got all this data.
Yeah.
And I read an article not too long ago. Here's this doc in Chicago who starts seeing flat philtrums and, the facial malformations, presentations, the learning differences, etc., starts digging into it and is like, lo and behold, I think about 5% of these kids I'm working with are on the spectrum.
Right.
That's, 20-something years ago. Surprise, surprise. Fetal alcohol spectrum disorders are all over America. Women have been drinking in pregnancy and using different types of, drugs that potentially affect the fetus from, when my mother.
Right. So the problem is everywhere.
Yeah.
But the stigma is greater here.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
That's really
we get the big stamp here.
Yeah, right.
That's
Exactly.
true. Very true.
For those who are tuning in, this is a prevention program, health department, and Dr. Omar talking about a little bit about his presentation of addiction and treatment on Monday. What was the date?
July
July.
16th.
Yes, July.
No.
July 17th.
Excuse me.
July 17th.
There you have it.
Previously, we were talking about addiction, getting a little more of Dr. Omar's background, talking about the idea of 1 in 12 who need substance abuse treatment, and in those 1 to 12, only 1 to 10 actually receive it, and kind of talking about the idea of shame and how it's a stigma in not just our community but around the world, and kind of getting more of an idea of how we can we will be talking a little bit more about how to best go around the idea of shame to make our communities better and try to get people the help that they need in order to regain trust and regain sense of self when it comes to family.
Right. So Monday, the presentation.
Yeah.
How did that go? How did it go?
You know, first of all, it's always hard to give these kinds of talks. It's a very emotional kind of presentation, and I've tried so hard to learn about the community. In fact, I've been listening to this radio station, KBRW, on the stream for a few months.
Wow.
And so just really trying to...
KBRW.org.
Yeah, there you go,
Yes,
there you go.
KBRW.org.
Tune in Thursday mornings.
Okay, there's a plug. All right, Thursday morning, so I will. So, but really, I have, and I've been reading a lot and just trying to learn as much as I can. But I'd only been in Barrow for really less than 24 hours or so when I gave the talk. So it's hard to do it when you've just arrived. But and people asked great questions, and I think it was well received. But to be honest with you, the most powerful thing that happened there was a young man in the front row who really, a local resident who spoke up and asked genuine questions about how effective treatment is. And that's what affected me the most, to be honest with you, because knowing that a local resident here would attend something like, a goofy doctor with a PowerPoint lecture, and really pay attention and want to know about what works, well, that affected me. That affected me very deeply. And I thought to myself, if nothing else happens this week, I'm cool. We made it some difference there. And but I thought it went really, really well, and I thought people were really excited and interested. And it just goes to show that I think there's a stereotype: people aren't interested in this problem, they don't care. That's not true. Mm-hmm. People do care. Yeah. Often, I think people feel powerless to do anything. Maybe they don't understand or have the support that's necessary. But people care, and people want help for this condition. Yeah.
I know from the focus groups and the talks that we've had with our program, like when we go and talk with elders, they will definitely share information on, well, not information, but their thoughts when it comes to people they see in town, their nieces, nephews, grandsons, granddaughters, when they're going through medical issues, or they're going through some kind of addiction, that the elders end up hurting from that. Like there was one focus group we talked about where we asked elders what advice or what would they tell today's generation, the 21 and up group. What would they tell them? And some of the things that came from that is like, we care. You are the future, so do something productive instead of destructive with yourself, that kind of thing. And wanting to, like, some of them were getting really emotional to the point where it's like they care, but they don't know how to help the ones that are kind of too far gone in their mind. Yeah. But at the same time, there is possibilities for them to get that kind of help.
Absolutely. And there was an elder in the audience who spoke up, I think, very eloquently about the importance of family recovery and the importance of the whole family getting treated. And in fact, that was very affecting to hear her talk about that. And, couldn't be more true. Absolutely true that the family, it's not just a family disease, but you need family prevention and family treatment and family recovery.
I agree.
All of those. Yeah.
I agree. When typically when I coined out my father in treatment, we had broke a few rules on accident while we were there when I coined him out, and I wasn't supposed to go to a group session, and I wasn't supposed to go to the one-on-one, but I said, this is my father. I'm here for my father. And my father wants me here, so I'm going to be here. And it turns out I actually wasn't supposed to do that until I had gone to my first Al-Anon group after I coined out my father. And I went to my first Al-Anon group, and turns out we're sharing notes with the other, parents and grandparents and children of the residents there, and I was the only one that had done that, and I was like, how come you didn't do it? It just, I felt like I had to do that because, when my father first went into treatment, I was thinking, well, he'll come back okay. Everything will be fine. And then I go to coin them out, and I was like, no, we have to change. All of us have to change. We all have to change. This isn't something where I could just hope and pray that, you know, he's cured for everything, you know, but it, and I encourage all family members that it is a family and a community, and our community is so tight. We are all like family, and our second and third cousins, we are incredibly close. That's, you know, that's our community. That's our area around here. That's how Inupiaq people are, is that even our second and third cousins, all 30 of them, are very close together. And it is a family event, and it should be family driven too as well. That, you know, it helps. I think it would help in recovery.
And you mentioned Al-Anon in your response.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I do, and I'm a part. There's no Al-Anon here. I haven't been able to get, but one other person that I could talk to about.
Can you explain what that is for me?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Al-Anon is it's loved ones that are affected by it's loved ones that are affected by people who are addicted to alcohol or drugs, or yeah, and it's, you know, it's children, it's parents, even it's grandparents, it's nieces, nephews, people who have been through that, because it you know, it's the term, what is the word I'm looking for, codependency, is also very real. Having had parents who are alcoholics and drug addicts, that codependency was a hard concept to grasp. Codependency is it's so hard to explain too. I don't even know how to explain that either. But it's very real, and it's hard to break that. It's really hard to break that, especially if that's your spouse too. I think it's harder if it's your spouse.
Neglecting
Yes.
your own needs in a destructive way to take care of others, and
Exactly. Like me cleaning up the mess on a Saturday from a Friday night party. That's a codependency.
so it's nice.
Hiding
So
it.
it's nice and clean for the next
Yes,
party.
Yes.
Right. That's the key. Yeah.
Or hiding it,
Yeah.
cleaning it. So I'm hiding the fact that
Yeah.
my parents are alcoholics, and just little things like that. And
Compulsive,
yes.
addictive fixing.
Yeah. So Al-Anon is a group to support people who are codependent, or people who are affected by alcoholism or addiction.
And families can find recovery there.
Yeah.
Families can find recovery there.
Very true, very true. I feel like Al-Anon saved me a lot in
Yeah.
a lot of ways, even though it was just one other person when I came here, but other groups I found online, or
Yeah.
through the phone, or even talking to someone who I had gotten really close to in one of the other Al-Anon groups.
That's
And
great.
sometimes when I go to Anchorage or Seattle, I'll attend one. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
I am so happy to hear this part of the discussion, because one of the things that I felt last night was so many people having questions about it's like, yeah, this is a family disease, but what does that mean?
Right.
You know, what do we really do? And it's not just when your loved one is in treatment, the connection that you have there and the teaching that you have there. And it's not just a cognitive brain event.
Right.
It is exactly as it is with the addict or alcoholic. Changing behaviors, changing the way we think, react, perceive things. And I want to put in a little plug for a great site. It is intherooms.com.
Yes.
www.intherooms.com. There are meetings of every type and every kind running 7 days a week. There's hardly an hour when there isn't an AA or an NA meeting. There are CODA meetings, there are Al-Anon meetings, every type of process addiction, etc. It's a thriving community, and they can be just audio or actual video meetings, no cost. So it's a great www.intherooms.com.
Great. Yes,
There's a
thank
lot
you.
of great recovery support there.
Yeah, I've had a lot of patients use those resources, especially in remote areas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Don't have access to a
that's
meeting.
remote areas. It's really hard when and living in remote areas too. You almost feel like I'm the only one. I'm
Yes.
the only one. It's just me. It's just me. But it's
Right.
not. It's even if from our corner of the world to the other side of the corner of the world, there's feeling the exact same way I'm feeling.
Yeah.
They're feeling hopeless and lost, and you're not alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For those of you just tuning in, this is the prevention program. Mary Lewis from Health and Dr. Omar here talking about Dr. Omar's presentation on prevention, addiction, treatment that he presented on Monday, July 17th. We talked a little bit about shame and communities, treatment when it comes to not just individuals, but getting families involved in the process of treatment when people go to treatment and they come back, how important it is that the environment that they come back to be more open, more friendly, more to the point where that person can. I'm going to steal some of your points, but how people can feel more safe when it comes to
Yeah, it's important.
security of being safe, and that's one of the reasons that people end up becoming better when they feel more safe, more at home, and that idea of family being involved in that and having those open arms to welcome that person back from treatment.
Absolutely.
So we've talked all in all different aspects of addiction. Some. I mean, 1 hour isn't going to cover even a little bit
Yeah.
of everything.
Yeah, so true.
But I do want to hit up prevention.
Yeah.
Let's talk about prevention. I love prevention. Me and DeShaun have been working together for 3 years now, and sometimes there's some days when we feel like it's hard
Sure.
and we're not getting anywhere, and then there's some days where something will reach 300 people and we're jumping for joy in the office.
Yeah.
Or there's that one person that says, "Hey, you guys," when we're doing an event, "Hey, you guys are doing a good job. Keep it up." I was like, you made my day.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
work up months to hear that thank you. And it's just like, it's exactly what we did it for.
I understand that.
But prevention does work. Prevention does work.
Yeah, one of the points that I made in the talk yesterday, or on Monday, was prevention is really hard because you don't always see the results immediately. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to prevent something. So the only way you know whether it worked is if it doesn't happen at some point. If your result, so it's hard, but it is absolutely critical. And we always talk about spending resources efficiently. And of course, it's much more efficient to prevent a problem than to have to treat the problem. And the more severe the problem gets, even worse. But it's not just the money, it's the impact on the community, because prevention can have a tremendously positive impact on the community. And I visit a lot of communities that have misunderstanding about prevention. They think that prevention is, as we talked about yesterday, scaring somebody, which doesn't work. It actually makes it worse. Right, exactly, like DARE, right, exactly. The original DARE. And or they may think that prevention is really just posters and ads. And of course, that plays a role. I mean, information and awareness is key, and programs like this one are absolutely key. But prevention is also getting out there and doing things like when you, DeShaun, are out playing those baseball games or whatever else. I mean, out there in the field, that's people actually living prevention, actually participating. And that's what warms my heart, because when I see something like that happen, I'm just blown away. That's prevention in action, right here, going on right here in Barrow. And that's what we need, is participatory prevention. People out there actually participating. What can we get to do to help people get involved? Because participation is a full contact sport. Prevention is a full contact sport. You have to get in there and be doing things. And I've been hearing about some of the things you're doing, and it's so awesome. I mean, I guess I would say we need more.
Yeah, we do. We do need more. We need more. I can't say it enough. We have 4 people working prevention every day, and it's not enough.
Yeah.
It's not enough, and we are. And I'm always very thankful for DeShaun, because DeShaun is always out there, like on his feet, talking to people. He really is. And everyone knows him too. He's known for Mr. Insanity.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the word. Asking. I was.
Oh, you're doing that. Okay.
I was
all right.
telling
I'd like to come take that.
Dr. Omar about your workout, and I couldn't remember the name of it except that it was extreme.
Yeah.
Certainly, Mr. Insanity is.
All right. So Mr. Prevention and Mr. Insanity.
Prevention,
You wear 2 hats.
Mr. Insanity.
I wear a lot, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. And prevention is, it's not, when we were talking about it too, you said that in long term too, this is also very helpful. It's almost chronic on the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not a lot of people realize too that prevention can't just be that one time, that one event, that
Oh,
one.
right. That's the biggest.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that drives me bonkers too. And it's like, you know what, the one event is fine. Let's do it. Let's do it. Great, let's do it. But let's continue to do it.
Yeah,
you know?
the metaphor I used
Yeah.
yesterday is that it's a marathon, not a sprint here. And in treatment, obviously, and in recovery, we measure success one patient at a time, one person at a time, one day at a time. But with prevention, we measure in years and sometimes in decades. And that's what we're really looking for, because I didn't mention this statistic yesterday, but if you can take a child, a 15-year-old, let's say, kid, and delay that first drink until age 21. So you push that drink off for 6 years. You can reduce the chance of developing alcoholism 6-fold. In other words, a person who starts drinking at age 15 is 6 times more likely to develop addiction than someone who waits and has that first drink at age 21. So actually, it turns out you can measure it down to the month, delaying it for a month. If you can delay that drink for a day, that first drink for a day, or that first drink for a day. So really delaying the onset of drinking, delaying the onset of exposure to drinking, minimizing drinking if it has occurred, anything you can do in that realm has a very direct impact on the probability of developing addiction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, huge
That's
impact.
15, if you can delay it.
Right. It's huge.
And, growing up, 15 was about the time.
Yeah.
We would all start drinking. That was about the time, too, yeah.
So the community
The
really
pressure
has to,
was
right.
about 15.
Yeah.
Yep. And if you can hold it off till
Yep.
you're 21.
Yep.
And DeShaun can tell you, too, on as far as brain, because we talk about this all the time with the youth. We talk about this in elementary, middle school, and in high school with our own students about why we should wait till we're 21.
When it comes to like the brain fully developing, you also talked about
Right.
this too the other day, that when like our brains aren't fully developed until around the age 25,
Right.
and when the younger kids are putting those substances inside of their bodies end up getting adapted to that, to the point where it's like, oh hey, when I don't have this, it's like meh. Like they don't want to deal with anything. But
Yeah.
A 15-year-old brain is going much faster
Oh, yeah.
than my
Sure.
33-year-old brain. So or even a 21-year-old brain, even a 25-year-old brain is going much faster. So that addiction is going through quicker. They need it more. They're going through they're burning through it faster. It's going through it faster and faster and faster. And you're not going to get that same high when you're 15 to when you're 25. And that's the reason why that's the reason why that age which should be at 25, but 21 waiting as much as you can, and like you had said, it's 6 times more effective.
And that's for all comers. But then if you look at people who have a family history of addiction, like you mentioned, you shared personally about your family history of addiction. And people who have a family history of alcoholism, that means they have a primary relative, like a mother or a father or a brother or a sister or a child. They have a much higher rate of developing problems. And because it is about half the chance of developing these conditions is genetic, about half. And that's true everywhere. And so, many folks will have an even higher risk. So if you have alcoholism in your family, then it's really important to consider not drinking at all, period. To consider that option even later, because it is a very much a risk factor for you, just as it would be for any other chronic condition. So.
Yeah, that's how a few of my friends are. I've gone to, when I went to school in Fairbanks, I had friends who would tell me like constantly they don't want to, like if some people are like, hey, let's go to the pub, it's Friday night, let's go somewhere.
Sure.
Like there'll be friends who are just saying like no, because they know from experience and from like seeing the trauma from like uncles, parents, and things like that, where it's when even just having one sip can take them over the edge.
Yeah.
And they don't ever want to see themselves in that kind of situation where like they're fearful of their own actions and can't control it later on. So they don't even want to try to take that one step over the line. So.
Yeah. And then one other point that I made yesterday about prevention is that prevention is not a guy with a bunch of PowerPoint slides teaching you about addiction. Prevention is really best delivered by each other, by peers, wherever possible, and in a participatory fashion. So yeah.
And another thing too is just like when doing prevention is that you don't, like, yes, we get happy for the person saying, oh, hey, you guys did a good job, but at the same time we don't do our job because of that.
Right.
Hearing it is great, but at the same time we're not doing it just to get that. We're doing it so that we can make a change in the community, because this is our community.
Yeah.
This is like for me, this is a place I've been living since I was 3. So it's like, even though I'm not totally in tune with a lot of the traditional Native culture or anything like that, at the same time, like, I've been here since I can remember. So it's my home. It's the people that I've seen throughout my years, and it's sad and it hurts to hear or see someone that's suffering, and when I want to help them and I can't, then it sucks. It sucks not to be able to help somebody, but at the same time, like, leading them down the road or trying to just asking them if they're okay, that is one of the ways that you can be helpful. Just asking someone if they're okay.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true. And like DeShaun said too, we want it long term in our community. We don't want that one event, that one time, that one effort stuck 2 years ago. We want to turn that 1% to 2%, and we want sustainable change is what we want, and that's where we try our hardest, is sustainable change over a long period of time, which is also really hard it's hard to measure.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's how it happens. Your baseball, your insanity, all of those things. Walking, people don't respond to this.
The jabbing.
They respond to, wow, it's see this guy doing all this. He's out there having baseball, having fun. Walking. It's the behaviors, and Dr. Omar was talking last night. It's like how does that ongoing change come from from making basically different decisions which are reflected in our behaviors. You know, the old fake it till you make it. You know, I don't feel like this baseball is not fun to me. Going to the bar is fun, you know. But I see DeShaun doing baseball. He's like, okay, I'll try it out.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's almost
It's
more
catching, you know, it begins to catch because there are other people in the community that are like, he's not some weird guy. He's like, okay, maybe
Well, it
maybe
can
I
be
should
a-
try
sometimes-
baseball.
it's infectious. It's infectious.
Yeah, it's infectious. It catches just like the opposite
Yeah.
catches.
And more people in our community are doing that more often, or they have been doing it to the point where, you know, there's leaders, there's different groups that do events or do what they can to incorporate that kind of idea in not just young people but in older people.
Yes.
Is that, you know, if you need help, or if there's a person who's seems like they're out of place, there'll be someone there that's like, hey, I'm gonna be doing this thing, you want to come join me? Just being in the community, or like that's one of my things too, when especially when there's newer people that visit Barrow. It's like there's two ways that you could picture it. One is you could stay here and survive, or two, you could stay here and live. Like if you're surviving here, all you're doing is going to work, going home, and doing nothing.
Right.
But if you're living here, you're embracing the community, you're open to the events that go on. People, oh, there's nothing to do here, this place is so boring. It's like, it's only boring because you choose to be
Yeah.
that person that's
Powerful
not
Right.
doing
statement.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The infamous, there's
Yeah.
nothing to do
Yeah.
here.
Like if you look at it, there's plenty of things going on here because there's so many people that want the community to thrive, want the community to be one with each other. And it's like, if you decide to go out there, if you decide to be open to the events or to the ideas and to the people that are here, then you can have a good life here.
Oh, so I mean, it reminds me. I don't know if I should tell, but it reminds me of when I was a teenager and I told my uncle that everything was boring. I don't want to go to this. That's boring. That's boring. And then my uncle, you know, and I don't recommend this, but he just sort of sat me down and he said, you know, Omar, one possibility is that everything is boring because you are boring.
Yes.
And it really opened my eyes. Like, oh my God, am I a boring person? So maybe I need to get involved in things and get active. And you know, as crazy as that sounds, you know, he was right about that. He was right about that. And just being more involved changes my perspective. Doing things changes my perspective.
If you hear of an event and you're not sure about it, still just go, just to see.
Get in the middle.
And if someone, oh, what'd you do over the weekend? Instead of just saying, oh, I did nothing.
Yeah.
Oh, I ended up going to this one event. I didn't think it would be that great, but hey, I ended up having a good time and
Right.
met some people or something like that. And it's just that idea of being open-minded to new things and that are in a more positive way instead of a destructive way.
Sure.
And there's a lot of things too that are offered. Like just the other day, I sent a group of flyers to a cousin of mine, and I was like, well, we can go to, and you know what, guess what? They have a little kiddie section where we can bring our kids, because we have kids, and there's almost that, well, I can't bring my kids to that. Well, you can. You can bring your kids to it. And I think you should bring your kids everywhere.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea to bring your kids anywhere and everywhere, wherever possible.
You know, and as a visitor to this community, but someone who's been very interested for a long time, I was struck by the values. And there's a real connection between prevention and the values of the INUP Act values. I mean, I was really blown away by that when I saw those, because I thought, not only are these human values, but these values are very consistent with what should work with prevention. It's all very aligned.
And we do, you know, in our prevention program, let me tell you, our coalition is called the Prevention Crew.
Oh, wow.
Because I was, you know, when we were thinking about this, I was like, well, let's ask our coalition about it. But when I was like, the idea is that our community is so tight because we are a whaling community, and that it can't just take one person to catch a whale and cut it up and feed your family. No, it takes a whole entire crew.
Yeah.
But not only the crew, it's the crew that needs the other crew's helps,
Yeah.
which is families and other people in town. And with all that community help and all that put together effort, what happens is you feed the community 3 times, and no one goes hungry. And you know, those are our values are stemmed in that too. And it's when we're thinking prevention crew, you know, just like as you're a part of a whaling crew, it would be like, you know, the such and such crew, or and they always end it with the word crew. You know, their family name and the crew.
Yeah.
Or their Inipak Sydney and the crew.
Yeah.
Or just what they think in the crew. Just like I think in Wainwright, it's Iceberg 13 crew or something. Anyways, so I was like, you know what? We're the prevention crew.
That's great.
Because it's like, you know, we're not trying to be super cool, but I was like, you know what? We have so many values, and our values are Inipak values that we live by every day. Our Inipak values, we really do take those home every day, and work with those every day. And whaling is a big part of it. And you know what? Even in our bylaws and in our Barrow Whaling Captains Association bylaws, which reflect all of our whaling, there's actually no, in black and white, says there is no alcohol or drug usage during whaling time.
Wow.
Not just out whaling, we go out
during that season. During that time.
the season.
Yeah, right, yeah. Wow.
During the season, there is no alcohol or drug use during that time.
You know, I bring it up not just because it's striking and powerful, because it is, and the way it permeates everything, right down to your prevention crew. But I also bring it up because I go to so many communities in the lower 48, in around the world, and I don't really often see such strong values that could tie a community together to take the issue of addiction and alcoholism seriously. I would argue it's harder for others. With that respect, not having the tight-knit community. So there's a power of the community here that's palpable even to a visitor that could be used to really address this issue of addiction. Yeah.
And you know what? That's one thing I wanted to get to. I wrote it down. I was like, you know, if ever going to be a new facility here, or around here, what are your suggestions?
Yeah.
You know?
That's a really important question. Yeah. You know, the easy answer is, don't build addiction treatment. If someone gets really, really bad, put them in jail or send them to Anchorage or somewhere else for treatment. Send them to Seattle, whatever.
Right.
You know, that's the easy answer.
Right.
I can tell you there's no way it's the right answer. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. In fact, I was medical director of, one of the largest, most successful inpatient residential treatment centers in the world. So I know that industry and treatment extremely well. I did it, I built it. And I can tell you that's not the answer. The answer is for treatment to be delivered locally. The vast majority of people who need help with addiction want help with addiction, believe it or not. They don't want it at every moment. But if you get to know somebody over the course of the year, there are going to be those moments they want help. Yeah. Now, we think of all the times that they say, no, I don't want help. Leave me alone. We don't think about those quiet moments where they're desperate and really do want help. Yeah. But that's the norm. The stigma is they don't. The truth is they often do. And the way to deliver care most effectively for the majority of people is to deliver it locally in an outpatient setting. What does outpatient mean? Outpatient means you live at home or you live somewhere other than the treatment center. Now, true, some people have violence in the home. They need to move out of the home. There may need to be other housing arrangements. There may need to be halfway houses, et cetera. I mean, all communities need opportunities there. But ultimately, the treatment can be delivered without disrupting your life in an outpatient setting, a place you go to. Intensive outpatient treatment can be 3, 4, 5 days a week, a couple hours a day, or something called partial hospitalization, which is still outpatient treatment, but you go all day, every day, or outpatient treatment, which is a step down, which is a couple times a week, or even aftercare, where you're going once a week or twice a week. But those are all outpatient levels of care. And I'll tell you something, it's not hard to do that. You can do that right now in Barrow. You could build that Hire for that, staff that, train that, and deliver that. I've looked around. I've been driving around Barrow. I've met people in Barrow. I spent some time in the mayor's office in Barrow and at the health department. I met with local residents, and I can tell you, this community absolutely could do that. There's no question. There's no reason that this community can't create an outpatient treatment center and deliver that treatment. And that's the answer, because you'll treat the most people, you'll treat the most people most efficiently, and you will create the most important thing you can, which is healed families. And healed, recovered families, those are going to be your champions for the future. That's how you're going to start a fire to really get this thing to spread.
I think most people don't know, just aren't aware of how truly intensive outpatient treatment can be. Like
Oh, yeah,
partial
sure.
hospitalization.
Right. All day,
where
every day for
you are basically, this is becoming your job.
Yeah.
You are becoming your job. And you're going and spending the bulk of your day every day, not just hanging out.
Right. And
you
there's
know,
and
but
there are
in
evening
real
activities
treatment.
too. And there are evening activities too. Yeah.
Intensive treatment.
Yeah.
Which also can and does include family treatment as well.
Well, I would say must.
I'd say
Yeah,
must
right,
too,
right,
but,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So all through the process, the family can be growing and be treated.
Yeah, and the children. So,
Because that's just huge. And I'm so glad for your sharing, because it's just huge.
Yeah. When my brother was in treatment too, we ended up going through a family, which was really hard, but I'm glad we were able to make it happen. We went through a family counseling session.
Yeah, we did,
Yeah, like every 7 a.m., which I think for him it was like, I know. He was, we had different time zones. It was 10 a.m. for him, it was 7 a.m. for us.
Yeah.
But we still all got up at 7 a.m. and got on a telephone conference. And I was thinking, oh God, I was dreading the entire thing the whole time, but I was like, you know what, I love my brother, I gotta do this. So we go on this thing every day, and we were at it for 2 months every day. Not every day, but it was like Monday and Wednesday every 7 a.m. But we did it, and we went through this family counseling, and we came out much better for it, much better. And it was like, I appreciate facilities that do incorporate family.
Of course.
I really do, because around here, family is very important. And it's, you've seen our values, you've seen it, kinship, it's in there. It's very important. Family is very important, especially around here.
There's a real struggle, like last night when you were talking about being able to love this person and remain open. There's a lot of confusion because people have heard the term enable, and enabling is very real. Enabling becomes a problem. It can become a very unhealthy manifestation of what you were talking about. You know, fixer, compulsive fixer, caregiver, you know, caretaker kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And so when we as family members also engage in treatment, we learn what it looks like to be able to support our loved one in a healthy way, but a non-enabling
And
way.
you know what? That's one point I wanted to make real quick before we go. I know we have to go.
sorry.
Is that being an enabler and having been an enabler and a codependent, that I've always thought to myself, well, my father's gonna hate me if I don't do it, you know. But in the end, I ended up not doing it. I ended up not enabling. I ended up not codepending, and guess what? My dad still loves me.
Yeah. So for those of you who are tuning in, you could check out Dr. Omar's Cravings, Why We Can't Seem to Get Enough. You could Google it, and I'm pretty sure you'll be able to find it. Or can you tell them your website?
Yeah, sure. It's manejwala.com. manejwala.com.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and Uvalota.